The small town of Ravenswood was known for its picturesque countryside and friendly locals, but it had a dark secret. The old and decrepit mansion that stood on the edge of town had been abandoned for years, and the locals whispered stories of the dark and terrible things that had happened within its walls. It was said that the mansion was cursed, and that anyone who entered it would never return. But no one had dared to enter the place in decades, until a group of college students decided to explore the mansion for a class project. They had heard the rumors, but they didn't believe them. They thought it would be a fun and exciting adventure, something to tell their friends about. But they were wrong. As they entered the mansion, the students were greeted by a musty and damp smell, and the sound of creaking floorboards beneath their feet. The windows were boarded up, leaving the house in a perpetual state of darkness. The only light came from the dim and flickering lanterns they had brought with them. As they explored the house, they found rooms filled with dust and cobwebs, and furniture that was falling apart. But there was something else in the house as well, something that was watching them. They could feel eyes on them, even when they were alone. The more they explored, the more they realized that the house was not abandoned. It was inhabited by something dark and terrible, something that wanted them gone. The air grew colder, the shadows grew darker, and the floorboards creaked louder. They tried to leave, but the door was locked. They were trapped, with no way out. They were at the mercy of whatever was in the house with them. Panic set in as they heard strange noises coming from the shadows. They could hear whispers, and the sound of footsteps approaching, but they couldn't see anything. The lanterns flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Suddenly, the door to the room they were in burst open, and a figure lunged at them. They could see long and disheveled hair, and a sharp and bloody knife in its hand. They ran and hid, but the figure found them one by one. They were killed, each in a more brutal way than the last. As the students desperately searched for a way out, they discovered that the mansion had a dark history. It was built by a wealthy family in the 1800s, but tragedy struck when the family's only son died in a tragic accident. The mother, consumed by grief, became convinced that her son's spirit was trapped in the house, and she began to perform dark rituals to try and contact him. The rituals drew the attention of a powerful and malevolent entity, who began to manifest in the house. The mother, in her desperation, made a deal with the entity, offering it the souls of anyone who entered the house in exchange for her son's spirit. The students realized that they were the latest victims of the mother's deal, and that the entity was still active and hungry for more souls. They knew they had to find a way to break the curse and escape the house before they became its next victims. They found an old diary hidden in the attic, which contained the mother's journal and the details of the rituals she had performed. They discovered that the only way to break the curse was to perform a ritual of their own, using the journal as a guide. They gathered the materials they needed and performed the ritual, calling on the spirits of the dead to help them. The entity fought back, but with the entity defeated, the curse was lifted, and the students were able to escape the mansion. They ran out of the house, gasping for air and covered in sweat. They knew they had narrowly escaped with their lives, and they were grateful to be alive. As they walked away from the mansion, they realized that the horrors they had witnessed were real, and that the stories about the cursed house were true. They also knew that they would never forget their terrifying experience, and that they would never return to Ravenswood or the mansion again. But even though the students were gone, the mansion still stood, and the villagers of Ravenswood knew that the curse was never truly broken. They knew that the house was still haunted, and that it would always be a place of darkness and terror. The end.